Thomas and the Great Railway Show. Museum piece. "I don't believe it," muttered Gordon furiously. "What's Thomas got that an important engine like me hasn't? Tell me that. Gallivanting off to museums. Pah!" "He's old," said James. "If the Fat Controller says he can be a museum piece, why should we worry?" "It's not fair, though," grumbled Henry. "For a chance like this, he wouldn't have minded being a museum piece himself." The jealous engines all ignored Thomas when they saw him at the junction. Thomas didn't care. He was too excited. "Why me?" Thomas asked Percy and Toby. "Fancy the National Railway Museum people at— where is it? At York, wanting me to go there. They've never even seen me." "Yes, they have," said Percy. "On television," added Toby. "The Fat Controller told us about it. He and Percy wanted to go with Thomas, but they knew that someone had to stay and run the branch line while he was away." "How much longer till we go?" Thomas asked his driver every morning. "1 day less than when you asked before," laughed his driver. "Anyone would think you wanted to be a museum piece." Thomas grinned. "Gordon, Henry and James are just jealous," he chuckled. "Who else is at this museum? Is Flying Scotsman there? Or Duck's friend, City of Truro?" "We shall have to wait and see," said the fireman. "I'll be very surprised if there isn't someone that you can remember from the old days." And that of course made Thomas more excited than ever. At last the day came. A large crowd came to the junction to see Thomas off, and the Fat Controller was there too. "Goodbye, Thomas," he said. "Enjoy yourself and be a credit to our railway." Everyone gave 3 cheers and Thomas set off. They ran across the island and over the bridge leading to the other railway. It was a slow journey, but at last they reached a place Thomas's driver called Carnforth, where they rested for the night in a big shed. Next day they went on. At Skipton, Thomas stopped for a drink and to let a goods train overtake him. While they waited, it began to rain. In a signal box a little way ahead, the signalman opened his level crossing gates for Thomas and set his signals to clear. Suddenly he heard a crack, and then a rattle from the level crossing. The lock on the gate had broken, and the wind was swinging the gate across the rails. Steam appeared above the trees as Thomas drew near. "Wow!" exclaimed the signalman, and quickly resetting the signal to danger, he ran to mend the gate. Thomas had never felt happier. His fire was bright, and even the rain didn't depress him. He neated a signal, its arm was up, showing that the line ahead was clear. Away we go, puffed Thomas happily. He was just passing the signal when he heard a clang as the signal arm fell to danger. "Whoa, Thomas," cried the driver, and put the brakes hard on. "What?" Thomas began, but then he saw just ahead a heavy level crossing gate swinging towards him across the line. The signalman tried to stop it, but the gate was wet. It slipped out of his hand. "Oh!" groaned Thomas as he skidded along the rails. "Help! I must stop!" But the rain had made the rails slippery, and he couldn't. He slithered helplessly along and was still moving when he reached the level crossing. With a loud crack, the gate broke against his buffer beam. "Ouch!" said Thomas, and stopped. The signalman ran to his telephone, and then directed Thomas into a siding where an inspector examined him. His buffer beam was bent, and one of his buffers was broken. "You can't go on like that," said the inspector. "Not on the railway, anyhow." "But I'm supposed to be in York tomorrow," wailed Thomas. "I know that," said the inspector. "Never mind, leave it to me, and I'll see what can be done." And with that, Thomas had to be content. Not the ticket. Thomas had to stay in the siding for the rest of the day. His fire went out and he grew colder and colder. The rain fell more heavily, and what had begun as a splendid day began to turn into a disaster. "I wish I was in my nice warm shed," he said to himself miserably. At last the inspector arrived. "Cheer up, Thomas," he said. "You'll be at the museum tomorrow, and they have promised to mend your front end in their workshop." "Thank you, sir," said Thomas, "but if I can't run on the rails, how can I get there?" "It's all fixed," replied the inspector. "A lorry is coming for you tomorrow." Thomas was horrified. A lorry?" he stammered. "That's right," said the inspector. "It'll be here at 8 o'clock sharp." Thomas slept badly that night. He kept wondering what Gordon, Henry and James would say if they knew he had finished his journey on a lorry. He almost thought he could hear them laughing. Next morning the driver and fireman came early. A diesel shunter came to push Thomas out of his siding and along towards the road, where they found the lorry waiting. A steel cable was fastened to his coupling. The lorry driver started a winch, and in no time at all, it seemed, Thomas was perched on the lorry. How undignified, he thought, but he found as they went along that he had a marvellous view of the countryside, and time to enjoy it too. But Thomas soon began to feel bored. At last, houses began to appear on either side of the road. Perhaps this is York, thought Thomas happily. It was, but the driver was unsure of his way. He parked the lorry and went to find a telephone. A man wearing a flat-top cap with a yellow band around it came up to Thomas. "Hello," said Thomas. "Humph," said the man. He wrote something in his notebook and went round to the front of the lorry. When the lorry driver came back, Thomas heard him say something, then slammed the cab door crossly. Soon they reached a large building with rails running into it. Thomas was unloaded and the driver drove away in his lorry. Thomas looked about him. He had arrived. When his driver and fireman came, Thomas told them about the man with the flat cap. They laughed loudly. "How do you do it, Thomas?" spluttered the driver when he could speak. "This will make the Fat Controller's day." Thomas booked for parking. Trouble on the line. The museum people were as good as their word. Thomas went at once into the workshop where his buffer beam was soon straightened and a new buffer bolted on. In the workshop was a green engine like Flying Scotsman, but smaller. He was called Green Arrow. "My brothers and I were built to run fast goods trains," he said, "but we did it so well that they let us pull the Express too in the end. Now I'm the only one of my sort left." Green Arrow was so friendly that when Thomas was mended, he was sorry to leave him. But back at the Great Railway Show, he was thrilled to see, instead, one of Stepney's brothers, Box Hill, an engine he remembered from the old days. Thomas was moved to a special position. "There's no doubt about it," said his driver. "You're a star attraction." "Is that being a credit to the Fat Controller?" asked Thomas. He was anxious to make up for the parking ticket. One morning, Thomas's driver arrived in great excitement. "We've got to give rides on the demonstration line," he said. Thomas was delighted. The 3 demonstration lines were different sizes. One was narrower than Thomas's, and the third was used by a very wide engine called Iron Duke. "This is broad gauge," he explained. "The Great Western Railway used it until about 100 years ago." Thomas wondered if Duck knew about broad gauge. It would be nice to tell him something about the Great Western, he thought. The engines had to take great care because of the many visitors. Thomas was anxious. Some people were not as careful as they should have been. Thomas had never seen such crowds. "We must watch out," he told his driver. "What would happen if a child got onto the line?" "Don't you worry, Thomas," replied the driver. "There are plenty of good strong barriers and we'll take care." But Thomas did worry. He was afraid that in an emergency he might not be able to stop soon enough. Next morning Thomas felt better. The sun was shining and he was looking forward to talking to Iron Duke again. He shunted happily backwards and forwards along the demonstration line all day. Then nearly at closing time, it happened. Thomas saw something fly through the air and land on the rails in front of him. His driver saw it too. He put the brakes hard on. "Beep, beep, beep," whistled Thomas in alarm. "I must stop, I must." Thomas shuddered to a halt, and a great cloud of steam wheeshed noisily from his cylinder cocks. But he couldn't stop before he hit the bundle. It burst. Sandwiches and crisps flew in all directions, while pop from a broken bottle fizzed over Thomas's wheels. In the crowd, a child, frightened by the steam, cried loudly. "I want to go home, Mummy, now!" screamed the child. "You noisy great engine!" shouted his mother, waving her fist at Thomas. "I'm going to see the manager!" "Oh dear," thought Thomas, "that's not the way to be a credit to the Fat Controller." "You did very well," his driver comforted. What a relief it was only a packed lunch and not a child on the line. The fireman was inspecting Thomas. "Hey, look at this," he called. The driver went to see. "You damaged your brakes when you stopped suddenly," he told Thomas. "No more work until they're fixed, I'm afraid." "Never mind. If the people here today have learned that engines can't stop at once, that's a good thing." Thomas hoped they had. Thomas and the rail tour. Engines were excited. There were to be some special rail tours to take to the seaside, and no one knew which engine would be chosen to pull them. "It ought to be me," observed Mallard. "After all, that seaside place helped to pay for my repairs." The others thought someone else should have a chance. Thomas knew he would not be chosen, but he enjoyed listening to the others arguing. He was pleased in the end when it was decided to give the trips to Green Arrow. When Green Arrow returned from the first tour, he said he had never seen so many people. Soon there was talk of putting on extra trains, but this was not possible. "All we can do is add extra coaches," they said, "but then Green Arrow can't pull a heavy train all on his own." "Of course I can," he scoffed. "My brothers and I did, during the war." "Can I help?" asked Thomas. The man in charge stared. "I don't see why not," he said. In the morning, Thomas's fireman arrived early. Thomas's fire was lit, and while the warmth crept through his boiler, the fireman made sure all his moving parts were well oiled. Behind, Green Arrow was being prepared too, and when they were both ready, they set off to find their coaches. The station platform was jammed with an admiring crowd, which didn't seem to get any smaller even after a trainload of people were in their seats. Thomas was coupled in front. He was pleased. He liked to see where he was going. At the seaside station, Thomas was turned round so that he could go in front again. After a rest, the engines set off once more. A ruined abbey stood at a place where the line curved beside a river. A crowd had gathered to wave and cheer, but Thomas wasn't watching them. Looking ahead, he had seen something strange. "Beep, beep, stop, stop!" he whistled an alarm. The train was heavy and hard to stop, but they managed it just in time. Now everyone was able to see. In front of Thomas, the rail near the river was lower than the one on the other side. "The water has undermined the embankment," said the inspector. "I'll go to the signal box and sort things out." Buses came for the passengers, but it was late before the men decided it would be safe to use the other track. Together, the engines pushed the coaches back to a crossover. On his own, Thomas slowly crept past the landslip. Then very carefully, Green Arrow pulled the empty coaches by, and together they brought the train back to York. A few days later, a party of important-looking people came into the museum. One was the man in charge, and behind him was the Fat Controller. "Oh dear," thought Thomas, "they've come to take me away for frightening that child." But the Fat Controller was smiling. The man in charge held up his hand for silence. "Thomas," said the man in charge, "your controller told us you are a really useful engine. He is right. For saving a nasty accident the other day, we have decided you should become an honorary member of the National Railway Collection. This special plate will remind you of your visit to us. Ladies and gentlemen, 3 cheers for Thomas the Tank Engine." The noise nearly raised the roof. "Well done, Thomas," smiled the Fat Controller. "I knew you would be a credit to our railway." Thomas comes home. Snow problem. While Thomas was away in York, Percy looked after Annie and Clarabel and took most of Thomas's trains. Daisy ran the fast one, which connected with Gordon's Express at the junction. This made her feel very important. "It shows how the Fat Controller depends on me," she told the others. Toby was in charge of the goods train and ran down to the harbour. He enjoyed that. His stone trains were dealt with by Mavis, the diesel belonging to the quarry company. One day, snow on the other railway had delayed the train from London, so Gordon's Express was late too. While Daisy was waiting for him at the junction, the blizzard spread across Sodor. Huge white flakes whirled all around, and her driver was worried. Daisy wasn't. "What fun," she said to herself. "The other engines don't like snow. I think it's pretty." and I've got the rails to guide me, so it won't give me any trouble." The driver was less confident. "Daisy hasn't got the weight that a steam engine has," her driver told the guard. "She can't push her way through, and we all know Thomas got stuck before, didn't we?" "He's told us often enough," laughed the guard. At last Gordon arrived, complaining about engines who were frightened of a bit of snow. "It's no problem," boasted Daisy. "A few flimsy flakes can't stop me." "Quite right," approved Gordon. "Well done. But I'm late. I haven't time to gossip." He puffed importantly away. Daisy started confidently, but as they turned towards the valley, the sky darkened and then was completely blotted out by whirling snowflakes. "Oh!" exclaimed Daisy as the wind blew them into her face. "I don't like this." "Neither do I," said her driver. "I can't see where we're going." They stopped at the next signal box, and Daisy's driver went to talk to the signalman. He came back looking glum. "There are deep drifts ahead, I'm afraid," he told the passengers. "We can't get through." "The signalman says Daisy must take you back to the last station," he went on. "We'll get you home from there somehow." "If we're lucky," the passengers said to themselves. They weren't. Before they had gone far, Daisy began to feel ill. She coughed, hiccuped and stopped. "Help!" she wheezed. "I can't breathe properly." "The snow has blocked your air intake, I expect," said her driver. He cleared it, but it was soon clogged again. Daisy could go no further. She felt like bursting into tears. The driver got down again and trudged back to the signal box to telephone for help. Daisy felt more miserable by the minute. Even her driver, when he came back, couldn't cheer her up. "They've promised to rescue us," he said, "but goodness knows how they'll do it." They waited and waited, but no help came. The snow drifted higher and was soon piled all round Daisy. Suddenly she heard a whizzing noise fill the air. "Oh no," she thought, "not another blizzard." Daisy was right. It wasn't another blizzard. It was Harold the helicopter. He dropped hot drinks for the passengers, and when they were feeling better, he lifted them one by one into himself with what Daisy could only describe as a sort of chair thing. The passengers went to the airfield where they were looked after until they could reach home. Harold couldn't help Daisy. It was a cold, miserable week before Toby rescued her. She doesn't think snow is so pretty now. Washout. Near the end of Thomas's branch line there is a small station, and close by the railway crosses a stream on a short bridge. As the snow melted, the water in the stream rose higher and higher, rushing and swirling in its hurry to reach the river at the bottom of the valley. Each time he passed the place, Percy watched the water anxiously. "Don't worry," said his driver, "it's got to come a lot higher before it can stop us." Percy shivered. He could remember the time when he had been stuck in a flood. He got very cold and very wet. Next morning Toby came up from the harbour. "No problem with the stream," he said cheerfully. "The water is much lower today." "That's good," said Percy. He set off happily with Annie and Clarabel, and when they stopped at the small station, Percy looked carefully at the stream. The driver went to look too. Toby was right. The water level was much lower. "All's well here, Percy," said his driver. "Come on, we've got a timetable to keep." They hurried to the junction where Henry was waiting for them. "When is Thomas coming back?" asked Henry. "If he does," he added, "I shouldn't be surprised if he decides to stay as a museum piece. He's old enough." He puffed away, chortling at his own wit. Annie and Clarabel were most upset. Percy had to spend so much time comforting them that he was late leaving with his next train. Percy had his tank refilled with water at the station by the river, and this made him later still. "Never mind," said his driver. "We don't need to stop at the station near the stream this trip, so there's nothing more to delay us." They reached the stream quickly, but as Percy ran onto the bridge, he felt it sink slightly under his wheels. There was an ominous crack. The bridge swayed. "Don't stop, Percy," shouted his driver in alarm. "Keep moving." Percy didn't mean to stop, and that was lucky. Clarabel was the rear coach. As she crossed the bridge, it wobbled again. When her back wheels left it, there was a sudden loud crash. The bridge vanished. 1 second it was there, the next it wasn't. It was safe to stop now. Percy's driver put on the brakes and the fireman ran back to look. All he could see of the bridge was lying in the middle of the brown rushing stream. Annie, Clarabel and Percy were badly shaken. The guard telephoned a warning, and then they all went quickly home. The Fat Controller closed the line while the bridge was mended. At first Toby and Percy enjoyed their rest, but they soon grew bored. When the bridge was repaired, and Daisy had recovered from her snowy ordeal too, things began to return to normal. But for some time afterwards, Percy was extra careful whenever he crossed the stream, in which he had almost had a bath. Toby's Mega Train. Toby was delighted to take Percy's stone trucks down to the harbour. He thought it a wonderful treat. Percy could not understand why. "It's only a harbour," he said, "nothing special." "I like it," said Toby. "It reminds me of the old days. I worked at the harbour on the other railway. I told you, remember?" Because Toby had only a small water tank, he always had to refill it at the station by the river. "What if we run out of water halfway?" Toby wondered anxiously. "We shan't," said his driver confidently. "But what if the water column breaks down?" asked Toby. "Thomas warned me about the water from the river." His driver laughed. "Don't worry, Toby," he said. "We shan't take you fishing." The harbour was busy and Toby worked hard. Not only did the stone trucks have to be taken down, but when they had been unloaded they had to be sent back, often full of things brought in by the ships. One day the stone trucks from the quarry didn't come. Toby waited in the yard. "It's not like Mavis to be late," he said to himself. "I hope she hasn't had another accident with a lorry that forgot to look where it was going." At last the station master came over. "Mavis wasn't well this morning," he said. "She's better now and she's on her way." And indeed it was not long before, with a cheerful toot, Mavis rumbled into the yard. Toby wasted no time in setting off himself. At the harbour, Toby found so many trucks waiting to go back that there was hardly room for what he had brought. "Phew," whistled the driver. 48 trucks and not all empty either. Some mega train. 2 journeys really, but we haven't time today. We could leave some and make 2 trips tomorrow." "Can't we take them all now?" asked Toby. The guard scratched his head. Toby's crew looked doubtful. "We shall be all right," urged Toby, and so they agreed. But Toby had forgotten about his small water tank. He had also forgotten that the journey was all uphill. He had to work hard and use so much steam, but by the time they had reached the station by the river, he had very little water left. His fireman put in the water pipe and turned the tap. Nothing happened. "Oh dear," groaned Toby, "now what?" "You could make it alone," said his driver, "but not pulling this load." Then he winked at the fireman. "Well," the driver went on laughing, "I do know somewhere." "Is it far?" asked Toby. "Not really," he said, and went to see the signalman, who told him where to leave the trucks. Toby pushed them carefully into a siding. Then he was uncoupled and they set off up the line. "Where are we going to get water?" he asked. "You'll see," smiled the driver, and stopped Toby right in the middle of the river bridge. "Now," said the driver, "where's my bucket?" "Ah!" protested Toby. "You promised!" Driver and fireman laughed heartily. "We're only pulling your wheels, Toby," they said at last. "We'll go to the top station for water, then come back for the trucks." When Toby told Percy what had happened, Percy wanted to help, but his driver reminded him that he had a train of his own to run in a few minutes. "Don't worry," said Toby, "I'll follow you down and have those trucks back up in here in a jiffy." And he did too. Thomas comes home. Workmen were mending the road near the level crossing. They sectioned off part of it with red and white cones, and a steamroller chuffed importantly. His name was George. He was a most unpleasant steamroller. "Railways are no good," he grumbled. "Turn 'em into roads." "Nonsense," said Daisy one day. "No one could reach the villages in the valley without our railway." "I'd build a road along your old tracks," said George. "Nothing to it. My mates have done it all over the place." Daisy told Percy and Toby what George had said. Toby was worried because he knew George was right. The Fat Controller wouldn't allow it, he said, but he wasn't convinced. Daisy was reassured, but she was careful to do nothing to upset George just in case. Then something happened which made them all forget their worries. Daisy was at the platform when the station master came to talk to her. He had a letter in his hand. "Thomas is coming back next week," he said. The engines were delighted, and so of course was Annie and Clarabelle. "The Fat Controller is holding a welcome home celebration at the junction," Daisy told George. "Lot of nonsense," he snorted. "Makes no difference. Your railway will be a road long before anything happens. You'll see." At last everything was ready. The engines and coaches were to go to the junction, and Daisy was to come last with a special train carrying the station masters, Mr. and Mrs. Kindly, and other important people. Daisy set off happily from the top station. She stopped at the station near the level crossing for her last passengers. There was no sign of George, but some red and white cones lay nearby. 2 of them were even inside the crossing gates. The guard blew his whistle. "Ooh!" tooted Daisy. "Away we go!" And she rattled towards the level crossing. As she did so, a gust of wind blew a cone towards her, and it disappeared beneath Daisy's wheels. "Ouch!" she squealed, and stopped. The guard removed the cone, which was now looking very battered. "Urgh!" groaned Daisy, trying to move. "Help! I'm stuck!" The driver got down to look. "That cone's damaged your brakes," he told her. "They've jammed hard on." "Oh no," wailed Daisy. "The passengers won't get to Thomas's welcome in time. Why can't that stupid George clear his rubbish up properly? I bet he did it on purpose." "Can't be helped, Daisy," said her driver. "We'll do what we can." A fitter came, and the men worked hard while Daisy stood and fretted. "We're going to miss Thomas, I know we are," she fumed. But at last the job was done, and Daisy set off with a roar. As they neared the junction, Daisy could see a big crowd on the platform. She heard a cheer. "Oh dear," she groaned, "we're too late." "No, we're not," said her driver. "Thomas isn't here yet. It's us they're cheering." Just then the signal arm dropped, and a familiar whistle sounded in the distance. Thomas came into the station. He looked tired, but he was smiling broadly. He carried the plaque which the National Railway Museum had given him. "Welcome home, Thomas," said the Fat Controller. "We are all proud of you and delighted to see you safely back, especially Annie and Clarabelle." Everyone laughed. The Fat Controller held up his hand. "Three cheers," he called, "for Thomas, our famous tank engine. Hip, hip, hooray!" Henry and the Express. Out of puff. The Express is a long, heavy train. Gordon usually pulls it, but only as far as the other railway. Another engine takes the coaches from there to London. It is an important train too, and must always run whatever happens. If Gordon is ill or busy somewhere else, James or Henry have the chance to pull it. They try their best and do it well. Too well maybe, because sometimes the importance of the occasion goes to their smoke boxes and makes them boastful. One day Henry was feeling very pleased with himself. He had run the Express on time, and the Fat Controller had congratulated him. "I don't know what the Fat Controller would do without me," he said importantly in the shed that evening. "Come back here," warned Douglas. "Too much puff about yourself and you'll run out of puff one day." "Pah!" scoffed Henry. "I pulled 2 trains and a failed diesel once, and the Fat Controller said I was an enterprising engine." "Hey, I mind it well," agreed Donald. "I took the goods train on ye recall. But Dougie is right. Puff goes before a fail." The Scottish twins were wasting their own puff, of course, because Henry took no notice whatsoever. A little later, the railway began using a new sort of coal. It was dusty and burned, with clouds of thick black smoke. The Fat Controller was cross, and the engines didn't like it either. "Filthy rubbish," they grumbled. The new coal made more ash too. Before long, all the engines began to have pains in their smoke boxes. Hot ash collected there and gave them the most awful indigestion. One evening Henry felt dreadful when he got back to the shed. His fireman had to clean an enormous pile of ash from his smoke box before he felt better. But the next day Henry could not make steam properly. He struggled to Edward's station but could go no further. Douglas was there. "I can't breathe," Henry wheezed. "Out a puff, are you?" asked Douglas. "Didn't he say we didn't warn you?" Henry couldn't answer. Douglas's driver took the train for him. The fireman cleared away more ashes, but when he tried to close Henry's smoke box door, it did not make the airtight fit that it should have done. "These hot ashes have bent your smoke box door," he said. "Air is coming in so that you can't breathe properly through your fire. But I know how we could cure that." He filled a bucket with water, then he fetched all the old newspapers he could find from the station bookstall. The driver helped him tear them into strips, which they soaked in the water. "What are you doing?" asked Henry anxiously. "Making something called paper mâché," explained the driver. "When this paper is soggy enough, we shall paste it into your air leak so that you can breathe better. It won't last forever, but it will get us home." "Oh," said Henry unhappily. His driver was right. When the job was done, Henry felt much better, and even the driver and fireman was surprised how well he steamed. "We'll have to get the Fat Controller to make it permanent," he joked. Henry went very carefully, and reached the shed without mishap. The story had got there before him, of course. Donald and Douglas didn't say anything, but now and then made sort of breathless puffing noises. Henry thought that they must have a very odd sense of humour. "Overhaul." "What you need, Henry," the Fat Controller told him, "is an overhaul." "Yes, sir," agreed Henry. "Does that mean I've got to go away to Crewe again, sir?" The Fat Controller laughed. "Not this time," he said. "You won't believe this, Henry, but nowadays the people at Crewe couldn't do the work you need." Henry stared, and the Fat Controller laughed at his surprised expression. "Don't worry," he said. "We can do everything at my works. All I have to do is get you there. If James takes the express tomorrow, we can couple you in front. Do what you can to help, and you can go to the works in style." Henry told James that night. "Help me," James snorted. "I don't need help. I can pull the express by myself, thank you." "Overhaul indeed. 2 engines on one train is an overhaul if you ask me." But the Fat Controller had already made the arrangements, so there was nothing James could do about it. Next morning James backed onto the coaches into the big station. Henry followed and was coupled in front. James was not in the best of tempers, but when the Fat Controller came to see them off, James tried not to show how cross he was. "Good luck, Henry," said the Fat Controller. "The people at the works know what to do, so you won't be there too long. James and Bear will take turns with the express when Gordon is busy." The express only stops once before it reaches the other railway, and that is at the work station. Because of his leaky smoke box, Henry could not help very much, but he saved his hardest effort for Gordon's Hill. The 2 engines raced up it faster than they had ever done. When they reached the top, James was feeling better. "That was fun," he said. "We might even be early at the workstation. We shall need extra time to uncouple you anyway." James spoke too soon. They had just crossed the viaduct when Henry felt something wrong with one of his wheels. "Something's wobbling," he told his driver. Just then they both heard a cracking noise. "Ouch!" exclaimed Henry. "Whatever it is, I think it's broken." There was a passing at a station. Something hit the platform and a brick flew past Henry's cab. It bounced off of James's boiler and disappeared. "Ow!" exclaimed James. "Henry might need mending, but he needn't throw his broken bits at me." Just then James and his driver heard Henry whistling to warn them that he wanted to stop. More bits and pieces flashed by, some hitting the carriages. Using the brakes skillfully, the driver stopped the train. Then while the guard made sure that the train was protected behind, James's driver went to see if any passengers had been hurt by the flying debris. No one had, but one of the carriage windows was broken. Henry's crew inspected his wheel. The trouble was not hard to find. "Your wheel has a steel rim called a tyre," Henry's fireman told him. "It has broken and come off. It's a miracle it didn't do more damage." James pushed Henry into a siding and went back to the train. "An overhaul, is it?" grinned James as he passed. "It sounds as if you need retiring, you poor old thing." He laughed loudly at his own wit and puffed away. Henry smiled to himself. I don't know about retiring, he chuckled. I certainly feel tired. Sliding scales. Because Henry was at the works, the other engines had to help with the flying kipper too. This is a special train of vans filled with boxes of fish which goes to markets in London and other places on the mainland. James did not like the flying kipper. All those smelly vans, he complained one morning. You can't get the smell off your tender for weeks. I'm very fond of a good kipper, remarked his driver. You're welcome to it, retorted James. A right old misery today, aren't you? Said his fireman. You got one out of the shed by the wrong door this morning, and make no mistake. Now get a move on or the Fat Controller will give you something to moan about. Groaning horribly on the curbs, James went slowly down to the harbour. The vans for the train were already in the shed, while men in aprons worked them, busy loading them with barrels of fish. Hurrah! Said James, wrinkling his nose. James was coupled to the vans. He had not been waiting long when a forklift truck, laden with fish boxes, rounded the corner and came towards him. Another, hurrying away for a new load, came too fast in the opposite direction. The loaded one swerved to avoid the other one, and its heavy load shifted. 6 full boxes slipped from the top of the pile and burst open on the rails in front of James. James closed his eyes in horror. Ugh! He shuddered. Broken fish and boxes lay everywhere. For once James was right. The smell was not nice. Luckily, there was plenty of time for the men to clear up the mess before James had to leave. A good job the boxes didn't fall on you, James, said his driver, winking at the fireman. James shuddered again. The idea was too awful to think about. At last, all was ready and the guard showed his green lamp. Thank goodness, said James to himself. There was a speed limit at the harbour, so James could not start quickly. Trains seemed heavier than usual tonight too, so when he reached the spot where the fixed boxes had burst, he was moving at no more than walking pace. The rails seemed clean, but oil and scales from the spilt fish were still there, coating them with a slippery film. As soon as James reached the place, his driving wheels, with nothing to grip, began to spin helplessly. James did his best, but the heavy vans dragged him to a standstill. He found he could move neither forward nor back. Fish! Exclaimed James in disgust. Men brought hoses and washed the rails. James grew very wet and more uncomfortable. They then put sand on the rails in front of each driving wheel, and James was at last able to move his train. He was very late, but at least he was off the fish quay. To say he was glad would be putting it mildly. Henry sees red. Henry found life boring at the works. The men worked hard to make him better, but it seemed ages before he was ready. At last, when he had passed the test to make sure he was mended properly, men came to repaint him. But Henry saw that instead of nice green paint, they had something very different in their paint pots. That's not right, protested Henry. The Fat Controller wants me to be green with red stripes, not red all over like tomato sauce. The painters laughed. You looked very handsome, Henry, they said, but don't worry, this paint is a special sort of undercoat. You shall have proper green with red stripes before we're finished. Undercoat? Muttered Henry in disgust. Whatever would the other engines say if they saw me looking like this? The men laughed and carried on painting. His driver came early next morning to wake him up. Come on, Henry, he said. There's an emergency on the big station, and the Fat Controller says you're to help. But I can't go like this, exclaimed Henry. They'll all laugh at me. No choice, said his driver. The diesel pulling the express has failed, and the Fat Controller needs you to take over. It's either us or a long walk for the passengers, and you know the Fat Controller wouldn't like that. The fireman raised steam as quickly as he could, and Henry, blushing with embarrassment, set off for the big station. The Fat Controller was pleased to see him. I feel so silly looking like this, complained Henry. The Fat Controller laughed. You do look unusual, Henry. Oh, he agreed, but you have helped me out of a very awkward situation, so don't worry about it. But Henry did worry. Soon, too soon for Henry, it was time to start. The express was heavy, and Henry quickly felt the drag of the coaches. "We'll need help on Gordon's Hill today," remarked his driver. But they were in trouble earlier than that. As they approached Edward Station, the brakes went wrong on the last coach of the train. They had to stop and uncouple it. To make matters worse, Donald, who should have been there to help, had been called away. Henry had to push the coach into a siding himself, and without Donald there was no one to help him on the hill. "Never mind," comforted the driver. "You can do it. You're an enterprising engine, remember?" Henry snorted. He didn't feel very enterprising just then. The men at the works had mended Henry well. His driver gave him as good a start as he could. It was hard going, but now Henry felt fired with determination. "Let them laugh at my red paint," he snorted. "I'll show them." Slowly he struggled upwards. "I can do it! I can do it! I can do it!" he panted as he went. "Oh dear, will the top never come?" Then suddenly there it was. "I've done it! I've done it! I've done it!" he puffed proudly. After that it was much easier, and they reached the other railway quickly. That controller, who had been on the train, came to congratulate Henry. "Well done, Henry," he said. "I'm very proud of you. Perhaps all my engines should be painted red, but you certainly earned your proper green with red stripes." Which of course is just what Henry got. And when he at last returned to the shed, there was a warm welcome for Henry the Green Engine, Wilbert the Forest Engine, Percy's Porridge. Donald and Douglas were rushed off their wheels. The fat controller visited them. "I know you don't mind hard work," he said, "but you can't be everywhere at once. You need some help on the branch lines." The Scottish twins were grateful. "I have a plan," the fat controller told them. He went to see a friend who lived in Gloucestershire and explained the problem. The friend took him to meet Wilbert, a smart blue saddle tank engine with 6 wheels. "Your owner says you can come and help me for a while," the fat controller told Wilbert. "Would you like that?" Wilbert was delighted. "Yes, please, sir," he said eagerly. His line in the Forest of Dean was short, and he was delighted for the chance to exercise his wheels. "If you are as good as I think you will be," the fat controller went on, "I know where I can get another engine like you, and then you will be able to go back home." Percy was excited when he heard the news. "Another saddle tank, sir," he said. "Is he like me, sir?" The fat controller laughed. "He's bigger and stronger than you, Percy," he said. "Besides, you can manage your trucks. I want him to help Duck, so I'm afraid you may not even meet him." During the week before Wilbert came, it was cold and wet. The engines thought it would never stop raining. None of them wanted to go out, but passengers and trucks were waiting. "Just the sort of weather when you need porridge for breakfast," laughed Percy's driver. "What's porridge?" asked Percy. Well, it's hard to describe," said the fireman. "You boil oatmeal and water, which makes a sort of sticky soup," finished the driver. "Then you add milk and sugar. Delicious." At the station by the river, sacks were stacked on the platform. Men who had filled them had worked fast and had not tied the sacks down properly. As the porter lifted the last stack, the signal arm dropped with a clang. "To hurry, here's Percy," the porter said, and he swung the heavy sack onto the pile, knocking the top one over. Several sacks toppled onto the railway line and split open. The oatmeal inside the sacks burst out, covering everything. The pouring rain ran quickly, turning it into a sort of sticky soup. At that moment Percy appeared. He wasn't going fast, but he couldn't stop himself from ploughing into the porridge which now covered the rails. "Ah!" he exclaimed and stopped. Porridge dripped from Percy's wheels, rods and frames. He felt awful, wet, sticky and cold. His driver and fireman got down to inspect the mess. "Oh dear," remarked the driver. "Well, Percy, you've found about porridge the hard way, haven't you? The thing is, you're supposed to eat it, not paddle in it." Percy didn't think that was funny at all. That controller wasn't amused either. He telephoned to the junction, where they were just in time to stop Wilbert on his way to Duck's branch line. He came along Thomas's line instead, and soon reached the shed at the top station. Percy cheered up at once. "I wanted to meet you," he said, "but I didn't think it would be this way. Porridge is all right for breakfast, my driver says, but it makes a mess of an engine who isn't expecting it. Cab over wheels." "You're lucky to have a long line," Wilbert told Thomas and Toby. "Mine is only 1.5 miles long, with a station at Norchard and another at Lympney. The scenery is superb, though, and my driver says it's better up the valley. Our volunteers are going to open that bit too. They work hard, but it takes a long time. One of Wilbert's first job was at the lead mine." "Don't pass the danger sign," Thomas said. "I fell down a mine once." Wilbert smiled. "I've worked in a colliery," he said, "so I know about danger signs. But," he added, "there was an engine once who thought he knew better." "What happened?" asked Toby and Thomas. Wilbert paused. "This engine didn't have a name," he began. "Just a number. 16. And he worked in a steelworks. One of the jobs that 16 and his friends had to do was to take the waste from the works in special trucks to a place they called the tip. Well," went on Wilbert, "16 got tired of always stopping in the same place. He tried to go further, but his driver always prevented him. The other engines tried to stop him too. If the notice says danger, you shouldn't pass it, they said. 16 paid no attention. Don't be stupid, his driver said. We mustn't pass the notice, or goodness know where we will end up. But 16 wanted to know. Pah, he scoffed. I can take care of myself. One wet day, 16's chance came. The rails were slippery, and when his driver tried to stop, he couldn't. You see, 16 had asked the trucks which were in front of him to carry on past the warning sign. They did, and their momentum pulled 16 with them. You silly engine, scolded his driver. It wasn't my fault, muttered 16 sulkily. It was those trucks. You've always wanted to pass that board, said the driver crossly. I believe you asked them to drag us on purpose. Foreman ran towards them. What are you doing there? He shouted. It's not safe. The trucks dragged us, explained the driver. Well, come to the office with me, and you, fireman, get your engine back on firm ground before it's too late, ordered the foreman. But it was already too late. As the foreman turned away, the earth beneath 16's wheels sank, and the rails sagged. A small rush of stone clattered away to the bottom of the bank. 16's fireman knew that if he tried to move the engine now, he would only make things worse. Oh, groaned 16. Beneath his weight, the rails sagged even more. Suddenly, they fell away completely. As the fireman leapt for safety, 16 overbalanced. The coupling between him and the trucks broke, and he rolled cab over wheels down the bank. He reached the bottom with a crash. 16 lay on his side, looking surprised and leaking steam in all directions. Help! He gasped weakly. Thomas and Toby were silent. What happened to 16 after that? Ventured Toby. Oh, he was rescued, Wilbert said, but he wasn't repaired, and he was sent to the back of the shed in disgrace. Is he still there? Asked Thomas. He got better than he deserved, smiled Wilbert. Some preservation people came and brought him, and now he lives in the Midlands. But I think he's lucky to have been given a second chance. Thomas and Toby could only agree. Foaming at the funnel. There is a dairy besides Thomas's branch line, at the station where the lines divide to go either to the harbour or the junction. Every afternoon, special tanker wagons are pushed into the dairy siding. They are filled with milk, and Percy takes them to the junction on his front train every morning. Thomas explained this to Wilbert. There's a hose pipe thing which puts the milk into the tankers, he said. They'll be ready by the time when you get there for the first train. Sounds easy enough, said Wilbert. Thomas told him a great many other details too. Wilbert listened carefully, trying hard to remember them all. Next day he was enjoying himself. He was a much more powerful engine than Percy, so he found that he could cope easily with Percy's trains. The trucks behaved well too, which was a help. He's strong, he is, muttered to each other. Don't upset him. You never know what he might do to get his own back. One day Wilbert took loaded stone trucks to the harbour. On his way back with empty ones, he stopped at the station by the dairy and pushed the empty trucks into a siding. He left them and set out towards the junction, pulling just a few vans. Right, he thought happily, I leave these vans at the junction and bring the empty tankers back. Then, when those are put in the dairy siding, I take the stone trucks on to the top station. They met James at the junction. James knew who Wilbert was, of course, and asked how he was getting on. Wilbert chatted excitedly about the jobs he had been given to do that day. "Sounds as if you're having fun," James said, "but it's best to take things slowly at first," and he puffed away. Wilbert continued his journey and reached the dairy station easily, but his fireman was worried about water. "We should have filled up at the junction," he said, "but you were busy chatting to James." "Never mind, we'll get water here." Tankers were at the end of the train. All Wilbert had to do was push them into the dairy siding. He drew forward and stopped by the hose pipe. "Just in time," said the fireman, and he put the hose into Wilbert's tank. As he turned the tap, the driver spoke to him. The fireman went to reply, but when he returned he found that Wilbert had stopped at the wrong hose pipe. His tank was full, but not with water, with milk. "You'll be foaming at the funnel if any of this gets in the boiler," gasped the driver. Quickly they put out Wilbert's fire and the fireman telephoned for help. Thomas came as soon as he could and pulled Wilbert back to the top station. Wilbert's tank was emptied and was given a thorough clean, so that the next morning he was quite all right again. "You and Percy make a fine pair," laughed Thomas. "He had the porridge, and you had the milk." Wired up. As soon as Percy came home, the Fat Controller came to see Wilbert. "You've done well," the Fat Controller told him, "apart from drinking all that milk." Wilbert looked abashed. "I'm sorry, sir," he said. I was a—" "It's all right, Wilbert," smiled the Fat Controller. "A mistake any engine could make. But now Percy is back, you can go to help on Duck's branch line." Wilbert puffed away. Percy and the others were sorry to see him go. Duck and Oliver made Wilbert very welcome. Duck let him travel in front of his next train so that he could see what the line was like. Wilbert enjoyed this, but found running beside the sea was very different from his sheltered valley in Gloucestershire. Next day he began regular work. During the afternoon he took some ballast wagons to the loading dock beside the small railway. Rex, Burke, Mite and Jock were delighted to show off their station to a new engine. Like the other truck, those on Duck's line decided they had better behave too. Donald and Douglas had kept them all in order, but Wilbert made sure they didn't forget what the twins had taught them. One day Wilbert was at the ballast loader. As he tried to pull some full trucks away, there was a loud crack and he shot suddenly backwards. The fireman got down to look. "The coupling gear on the wagon has pulled away," he said. "Now what?" Besides them, watching with interest, was Bert. "I pulled a train that was glued together once, when one of my couplings broke," he said. "We need more than glue here," said Wilbert's driver. Then he noticed a coil of signal wire lying beside the line. "Could we do anything with that?" he asked. "You'd never move the train with wire," objected the fireman. "But what about just one truck?" suggested Wilbert. "I bet I could pull one truck with wire." "Brilliant," said the station master, who had come to see what was wrong. "I'll go and tell the signalman what you're doing. Let me know when you're ready." The fireman wound the wire round the truck's buffer beam, leaving long loops. Then he twisted into a rope, making a small loop at the end, which he fastened to Wilbert's coupling hook. A shunter uncoupled the front truck from the rest, and at last everything was ready. "Right, Wilbert," said his driver. "Gently now." He opened the regulator very carefully, easing Wilbert slowly backwards. The wire tightened, stretched and held. Slowly the truck followed Wilbert out of the siding, and he could then push it into another out of the way. Then he went back to his ballast train. This time there was no trouble, and he reached the big station late but safely. By the end of his stay, the Fat Controller knew that an engine like Wilbert was exactly what he needed. "I am delighted, Wilbert," said the Fat Controller. "Please take our best wishes to your friends in the Forest of Dean. We hope that your line will be as successful as your work here." Thomas, Percy, Toby and Daisy came to the junction to see Wilbert off, and whistled cheerfully as he passed. "Beep, called Wilbert. "I've had a wonderful time, but I'm looking forward to getting home. Goodbye and thank you." And with a whistle he rounded the curve and disappeared into the tunnel.